You're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show.
The view from our side of the cockpit door.
WAPG, it's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Airline Pilot Guy, episode 642.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy.
Hello, you're listening to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. The view from our side of the cockpit door. With your host, Captain Jeff, broadcasting live from the APG Road Vessel Studio. Today's show is recorded on the week of December 2nd, 2024.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the Airline Pilot Guy. It's your light and he's flying by. With the Airline Pilot Guy.
In today's episode, a charter flight arrives in Montreal with part of its landing gear not fully extended. And a beloved private pilot dies during a dog rescue. Also ahead, more news and your feedback. So get all settled in. Tray tables and seat backs in the upright and locked positions. Electronic devices powered on. I'm Radio Roger, and Flight 642 is ready for pushback.
Thank you, Radio Roger. He's an award-winning TV and radio reporter, currently at the #1 all-news station in the nation on 1010 Winds, 92.3 FM in
New York City!
Welcome to the Airline Pilot Guy Show. It's an aviation podcast covering the latest in aviation news and answering your great feedback. I'm Captain Jeff, a former U.S. Air Force pilot and retired Delta Airlines captain. And joining me today from his home studio,
in Hartford, Hereford, and Hampshire.
ex-professional photographer, former RAF, RAAF fighter pilot, retired Airbus A330, A340 captain for Virgin Atlantic Airways. It's Captain Nick.
Hi there, Jeff. I don't know about you, but all hell has just broken loose in my house here. Show 642 may refer to a document that provides guidance on safe practices for people working in the airside area of airports and aerodromes.
Very important to be safe.
Yep.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. And it is just, I mean, you just can't get this on any other podcast.
Thank God.
For good reason. And from his home studio in the North Georgia forests, a race car driver, high performance, high altitude, tail dragging, and complex endorsed instrument rated pilot with an affinity for self-taught haute cuisine and anything with enough horsepower to kill him. Our guest host, AJ Schramm.
Hi, Jeff. Hi, Nick. Glad to have you guys have me back.
We're glad that you're back.
That sounded better in my head than it came out.
Yeah. Well, it's always good to be had, I'd say.
It is good to be had.
Yes. All right. And then this is where we normally introduce our producer, Liz, but she is absent for the first part of the show here, and that's why it's kind of a train wreck already.
Is she absent without leave?
Yeah, absent without leave. I think that, I think we kind of gave her permission, so I guess she's on leave.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, so we don't have to send the gendarme or the police. Is that right? Gendarme?
Gendarmerie. Yes.
Gendarme. Okay. I should not try to speak another language. Note to self. Okay.
Enough struggles with English.
Yeah,
I do.
I was going to say, you should try English occasionally.
Well, I'm trying, really am. Okay. Well, without further ado, let's go ahead and start some news. Start with some news.
Stand by for news.
Okay, our first one is from Aviation Herald. Nolinor, Boeing 737-400, registration Charlie Golf Whiskey X-ray, performing flight 662 from Quebec City to La Baye, maybe, in Quebec, with 87 people on board, was on approach to La Baye when the crew initiated a go-around due to an unsafe gear indication. The crew diverted or decided to divert to Montreal Mirabel in Quebec, where the aircraft performed a landing on runway 24 with the left main gear not fully extended. The aircraft came to a stop on the runway and was evacuated. No injuries are being reported. And I have a little movie clip here, video clip of that from a passenger sitting just aft of the left wing on the left side. There we go. Oh, kind of a bumpy landing, kind of listing to the left a little bit. Oh, yeah. That's usually what the interior cabin looks like after my landings.
More of an
the airplane's turned upside down.
Oh no, that's really worse than I thought.
It was all going so well, yes.
They're all laughing, so it must not have been too bad. But yeah, I think that the landing was a little bit bumpy. I have another. Let's see, the photo that I have here on the keynote is the kind of a freeze frame from that video we just watched. But here is the view of the 737 from the front, looking aft. Yeah, you can kind of see that left main gear. Yeah, didn't work so well. But
2 out of 3 ain't bad.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, if only they'd had 4 sets of wheels, they would have been fine. Missing one wouldn't be nearly so bad.
True. Yeah. But that's not the way it's designed. It's not a big jet like you used to fly, Captain Nick. All right. Anything else?
True.
Yeah.
Why do they land flapless?
Oh. I'm wondering if they retracted the flaps after
I thought it looked like they were down in the video.
Landing roll.
Yeah, I think in the video.
Can you play the video again?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure I can. Let's see.
Yeah.
Whoa, you're right.
Very
not.
And no spoilers either. Well, there's one trying to come up there, but...
That's interesting. I hadn't noticed that before. Exactly what I would say.
Well, that's when they roll upside down. And then they're the right way up again. Lucky them.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know why they didn't have the flaps out. That doesn't make sense to me. I mean, why would that be part of the procedure for landing with one of the main gear retracted? Peter's in our live audience is asking, was it maybe hydraulic failure on the left side? But I don't know.
Well, I don't know how the 737 directs its hydraulics, but normally all the flaps would be run by 1 or 2 hydraulic systems. So, and you'd lose everything, or you'd lose. You wouldn't just get one flaps on one side. Actually, Peter, I'm just misinterpreting what you're saying. Yeah, they could have lost a hydraulic system. But I don't know why. The loss of a hydraulic system wouldn't normally prevent you lowering the gear, because normally it has a backup, but perhaps they had to do a gravity drop and one of the wheels didn't lock in place. I don't know.
Yeah, there might be a lot more to this than or is being revealed in this article on Aviation Herald.
Yeah. I'm also curious as to their choice of diversion airport, going because they were headed north, it looked like, on the flight track, and then they diverted and went past their original airport all the way back down to Montreal.
Maybe they have more options for maintenance and connections and that sort of thing down in Montreal Mirabel. But in this case, it's not like they're on fire, or they have to. It's not an urgent. You don't have any time. You got to get it on the ground right away. So, I think if it's within a reasonable distance and time, I think that they kind of allow for that decision making. I
like Elliot's observation here.
Yeah, Elliot has a nice comment about the 737. The cowlings are already flat on the bottom, so they've got that going for them.
That's very true. Very
no
true
one will
indeed.
even know.
Yeah, they won't even notice.
I agree, Jeff. I mean, with our aircraft, we had 4 hydraulic systems. There were actually 3 systems, but powered by 4 pumps. So the main system actually had 2 pumps. But if you lost a single hydraulic system, it wasn't really can be considered a dire emergency. If you lost 2, then with only 1 remaining system, you would put it down at the closest available airport. But if you lost a single hydraulic system, no, you could choose a suitable diversion as opposed to one that just happens to be underneath you. And that may have been the case, that they just lost a system and they decided to divert, knowing that this would be a good place to go to where they got engineering facilities, and like you say, they can move the passengers on quite fairly easily. But it sounds like they lost whatever main hydraulic system they have that did perhaps both gear and flaps, which seems to be quite a important system to lose. I find it hard to understand why the 737 wouldn't have a backup hydraulic system for those services, because they're so important. But there you go.
Yeah, unless there's some kind of a hydraulic fitting or hose that's leaked, and so you can't put the hydraulics and the pressure in that part of the system. I don't know. Yeah, as I said, there's a lot more to this, I think, that we need to find out. Archie Lewis, I'm not sure how to pronounce Archie Lewis. Archie, in our live audience, says the current 737 MAX QRH is recommending flaps 40 landing, and Charlie Yankee Mike X-ray is their base. So that's probably another good reason for them to divert to Mirabel.
By the way, I love their headgear on the evacuation. They're all truly dressed for Canadian weather. But I also notice, are we going to criticize them for leaving with their luggage? Or having decided that the airplane was perfectly safe, were they evacuated in slow time and given permission to take their luggage? I don't know. They certainly don't look very concerned, and they're not exactly running away from the airplane.
There's not much of a sense of urgency in that picture.
Not sure that was an emergency evacuation. I think it was more of an orderly evacuation using the slide there. I think we'll go ahead and let it slide.
Give them the benefit of the doubt.
Didn't mean to, make a word.
But I love the fact that they're all dressed up in their parkas and woolly hats.
Yeah, I love that too. I think it's best for us just to let the whole thing slide.
Yep, slide down the slide. Okay. Mind you, it must have been quite hard sliding down that slide, because with the undercarriage failed on that side, it wasn't at a very steep angle, so they probably would have had to run down it.
It's the slow evacuation.
Had to use your arms,
him jump and hit,
pushing,
and then just.
Yep.
All right. Let's remove that from just too many things going on here. I need an assistant. Okay. Anything else left to say? Well, hopefully you get an update on this. This happened when? November 27th. So not too long ago. So hopefully we'll get some kind of a preliminary report that gives us a little bit more detail regarding what happened here. Other than the obvious, landing with the left main retracted. All right. This next one is also from the Aviation Herald, avherald.com. By the way, a lot of the news items that we have for you today are final reports. I guess they all decided to get those things published before Christmas time so they can focus on the holidays. I'm just guessing, but I'm thinking that might be actually the truth. This involves a Porter, de Havilland 8-400, registration Charlie Golf Lima Quebec Bravo at Sault Ste. Marie on the 16th of April in last year, 2023, runway overrun. They were performing flight 2691 from Toronto City, Ontario to Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario, with 52 passengers and 4 crew. They landed on Sault Ste. Marie's runway 12 at 22:21 local time, so late at night. but they overran the end of the runway, came to a stop on soft ground about 85 meters or about 280 feet past the end of the runway. There were no injuries. The aircraft sustained minor, if any, damage. I think I have a photo of the aftermath of this overrun. And here we go. Yep. So looks like pretty nice, flat, grassy overrun area.
Good Lord,
And
how many times did they overrun? Look at all those tracks.
He's not the
they
first
made.
one.
Yeah, didn't get it right. Didn't get it quite right. Tow us back up. We'll have another go.
That or they've already taken the other airplanes that went off the
all the other ones that went off in front of them.
Yeah.
They moved out of the way. On the 1st of May, 2023, the Canadian TSB reported upon arrival, the flight crew performed the RNAV approach for runway 12. However, after touchdown, the aircraft overran the end of the runway. Yeah, duh, we see that. The aircraft came to a stop about 200. Okay, we already talked about that. So on the 20th of November, 2024, not too long ago, the final report was released by the TSB. And let's see, once the contributing factors and causes here, once the aircraft was over the runway, the flight crew's focus briefly shifted to other tasks. And
Where's my coffee?
Yeah, exactly. I need to fill out that report. Can you hand me that pen over there,
right.
please? And with the limited visual cues available during the night landing, they did not recognize that the aircraft was further down the runway than expected. The wing spoilers deployed 2 seconds after touchdown, and the lowering of the nose wheel and application of full braking was delayed because the flight crew were unaware of the aircraft's proximity to the end of the runway. As a result, significant deceleration did not commence until the captain recognized the runway end lights when the aircraft was 850 feet from the end. When the captain applied full braking with 850 feet of runway remaining, the aircraft should have been theoretically able to stop. However, braking performance was degraded, likely due to the runway surface texture on the last 300 feet of the runway and possible air contamination in the hydraulic system. As a result, the aircraft overran the end of the runway. Okay, so they talk about findings as to risk. Let's see. All right, the TSB analyzed in this occurrence while touching down on runway 12 at Sault Ste. Marie. The flight crew were not initially aware of the aircraft's proximity to the end of the runway. And when they did become aware, the actions taken were not able to bring the aircraft to a stop before it reached the end of the runway. Let's see. The occurrence's aircraft's approach into CYAM was conducted during night and light rain. The crew's plan was to touch down between 1,000 and 2,000 feet from the beginning of the runway, with taxiway Juliet located approximately 2,000 feet from the beginning of the runway, marking the end limit of the expected landing zone. Okay, so they had briefed this and they kind of had planned to get it down within the first 2,000 feet, and that taxiway Juliet was going to be that visible marker that's the end of my touchdown zone. The primary visual indicators that were available to assist them in their landing were the runway edge lights, the taxiway lights and signs, the lights of the intersecting runway, and the runway end lights. While the aircraft was passing taxiway Juliet during the final approach, the captain was checking the pitch indicator to monitor for a pitch angle greater than or equal to 5 degrees per company procedures to avoid the risk of an aft fuselage strike. At that point, the FO was focused primarily on the runway surface to ensure the aircraft's proper contact and alignment, given the visual challenges associated with conducting a landing at night and in light rain. It's therefore likely that the crew did not either perceive or process taxiway Juliet as they passed it during this phase of flight. Okay, so the FO, they're saying, was focused on getting a nice touchdown, looking maybe directly at the runway surface and not looking at any of the other cues in his peripheral. The captain was, doing the crossword puzzle. No, he was looking at the PFD to make sure that the pitch wasn't too high, because I guess the 400, the Q400, has a tendency to have some tail strikes if you go more than 5 degrees positive pitch. So, zoom, they go past taxiway Juliet, the marking of the end of their touchdown or their planned touchdown zone. Okay. When the nose gear touched down completely with 1,700 feet of runway remaining, the FO initially applied only light braking in accordance with company after landing procedures, which was not immediately corrected by the captain, indicating that the crew was still not aware of the aircraft's proximity to the end of the runway. One of the ways in which a flight crew's situational awareness on a runway can potentially be improved is the use of signage dedicated to indicating remaining runway length, as you would find here in most airports in the U.S. anyway. And I would imagine also in the UK, Captain Nick?
Only in military, and this is something I was going to bring up. I'm not familiar with signs marking the number of feet or runway distance remaining, even in the States. I don't think I can't remember an airport where I've seen it.
Almost every runway that I ever landed on, and my experience had the runway remaining markers.
I don't know why I wasn't aware of that, but I don't ever remember seeing it. But so I was going to say, why do military airports have this facility? Because after all, it's about the cheapest thing you can possibly put up on a runway that is incredibly valuable, and that is distance remaining. All the RAF airfields had it in thousands of feet, so just 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, easy enough. So I was going, well, that should be it. You shouldn't need to have to identify a taxiway and then say, right, that's the end of our touchdown zone. You should just be able to look out at the signs.
And another thing, being that this was at night, at least a lot of the airports that I've flown in here to the U.S., depending on which lighting system and all that, but the centerline lighting will actually change as you get down to, I think it's the last 3,000 feet of the runway, somewhere in that ballpark. It changes to alternating red and white instead of white centerline lights at, 1,500 feet maybe, or 1,000 feet, that they turned to solid red.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly. I think 1,000 feet.
3,000, it starts alternating, and that goes on for 2,000 feet, so the change to all red is at 1,000
at 1,000 feet remaining. Yeah.
Ooh,
but this airport did not have centerline lights, and it had no touchdown lights as well. So it only really had edge lighting.
Yep. And
did the edge lighting not change color as well?
No.
I guess it did. Well, it should do. They should be white, except on instrument runways where yellow replaces white for the last 2,000 feet. Or half the runway length, whichever is less. So we would have been at 2,000 feet on this runway.
Well, according to the TSB here, situational awareness can also be improved by having yellow runway edge lights in the last portion of the runway, indicating to a flight crew they have reached the last third or the last 600 meters of the runway. Although newer runways are approved under these requirements, many airports like this one were certified under previous standards and still have white runway edge lights all the way down. So they did not have that.
Well, that's
if only
naughty,
we just read a little bit more.
Yep.
Yeah.
That happens a lot.
But that's naughty. Because I don't think it's expensive just to change some the color of the light bulbs or whatever.
Well, it's got to go to committee, and then that has to be approved, and then you have to get a contract.
Yes, you're quite right, of course. But no, it would have saved this guy a lot of hassle. But having said that, don't you, Jeff, when you were landing and you were starting to float a bit and things weren't going in the normal cadence of, past the end of the runway, 50, 40, 30, 20, retard, down you go, and you're drifting and you're consuming runway, doesn't the hairs on the back of your neck start to rise? So, just from your own body clock and your own knowledge of the rate at which things happen during the landing, you would, I'm sure, already be going, we're landing long. What's going on here? Why aren't we down? And I'm just a bit confused as to why both of the pilots persisted with the runway when they were obviously now concerned, should have been concerned that their landing cadence hadn't been going right, as it were. I don't know a better way to put it.
Yeah, the TSB kind of gives a possible idea as to why they didn't think they were as far down as they were is that when they crossed the crossing runway that had some lights on it as well, I think that they perceived that as taxiway Juliet, their pre-briefed end of touchdown zone visual cue. And so they perhaps mistook the crossing runway as taxiway Juliet. So they were much further down, but they didn't think they were. They thought they were, exactly where they were supposed to be, that they had touched down before that.
That runway is at least 1,000 feet past taxiway Juliet.
Yeah, that's a problem.
So, I mean, it's more than halfway down the runway, the crossing runway. So I'm thinking by then you should really have a good feeling for the fact that the runway... Anyway, they didn't. So,
right.
Yeah, and this was the result.
And they're talking about a little bit later in this report about the use of propeller reverse thrust. Now, I know that Captain Nick and myself do not have experience flying turboprop aircraft. I don't know, AJ, do you have any experience with...
A little bit.
Okay, so you're a little bit familiar with beta and reverse propeller thrust and that kind of thing. Well, when I was reading this report... well, let me read a little bit of this section here. Owing to the fact that Q400 Airplane Flight Manual and the DHC-8 Series -8 400 Airplane Operating Manual do not provide specific guidance on the circumstances in which propeller reverse should be used, the decision to use this function is based mostly on the pilot's training and familiarity with the aircraft's behavior when reverse is activated. Porter Airlines procedures state that the use of reverse should be kept to a minimum, should be only used if required for operational or safety reasons. Let's see, cautions for its use are also provided. In 2019, Porter acknowledged the limited familiarity among its pilots on the usage of the propeller reverse and issued an internal safety alert. The alert identified circumstances in which the use of reverse should be considered, such as inoperative anti-skid or normal brake system, or any situation in which the stopping distance is critical. Not so sure in this case that would have applied, but they're just kind of throwing it out there that there was some discussion about when to use reverse thrust and perhaps training to kind of give the company pilots practice in the use of reverse, and they did this in the simulator, and discussions about the use of disc/reverse as part of their line indoctrination training. And it goes on to say, and this is what kind of threw me off a little bit, I thought there was some kind of a misprint or what do they call it? Like a typo. The function is rarely used in normal operations given the reportedly high efficiency of propeller disking during landings. And I'm thinking, maybe they meant to say propeller disconnecting during landings. But then I looked it up because, I don't have any experience with
Is it referring to
turboprops.
beta thrust?
Yes, that's exactly what it is. This little paragraph here I pulled off of an airliners.net discussion about propeller disking. And let's see, there's a position in beta mode, power lever control a propeller blade angle called disking or zero pitch. At zero pitch, with the aircraft stopped, the propellers provide zero thrust, either forward or reverse. When used at a high forward speed, like when you're landing, engaging this mode is as effective as using moderate braking. Together with disking mode, the engine is at idle, so there's virtually no loss to using disking on landing. So I think that was the normal thing that these crews were used to using. And I guess you'd have to go into further manipulation of the propeller. What do they call that lever? Anyway,
and the ones I've flown, it's the throttle.
Okay, they would have had to gone to a even past that setting to get into reverse thrust, which would definitely give you even more enhanced slowing performance.
On the Malibu, there's a lever on the front that's a lockout. When you go all the way back to flight idle, and then you click the lever up, it'll click into the next detent, which is beta. And then as you pull the lever back, it goes more and more into reverse.
So it's going into reverse by changing the pitch into a negative pitch angle? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I think is pretty hard on it adds a lot of strain to the engine itself, which may be one of the reasons that a lot of companies don't want you to use it unless you have to. But
Well, it strained the propellers or strained the undercarriage in this case. Take your pick.
they might be thinking that brake pads are cheaper than prop hubs and engines.
Yep.
Yeah, I think so. And then the last thing they said here, in addition to maybe not using everything that they had available to them to decelerate before exceeding the end of the runway, is the fact that the brake system didn't work as it should have, and there was presence of error in the hydraulic system. They said post-occurrence maintenance activities revealed that the brakes could not hold the aircraft in position during high-power engine runs because of the presence of air. Although the investigation could not determine how this air, which was subsequently bled from the brake assemblies, have been induced in the hydraulic system, possibly affected the aircraft's braking performance during this occurrence. And then they also lastly talk about the runway surface texture. And they did some measurements on the surface texture of the runway. At the end, it did show some significantly low measurements of friction. So, you put all that together and those darn Funyuns get all nicely lined up. And for those of you not familiar with Funyuns, it's like the Swiss cheese model, only better and crunchier.
Much crunchier.
So.
Very good.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. So did we want to talk any more about, it's interesting that you didn't, because I mean, my recollection of runways and the runway remaining status, those are like black markers on usually both sides, or at least one side of the runway, with 1,000-foot increments of the runway remaining. Almost every one of even the smaller airports that I flew into had those remaining markers installed, which I always thought was nice, because then that gives you a definite indication that you're running out of runway as you get further and further down.
Yeah, perhaps the runways I landed on were too big for me to see those. They,
could
stretched my peripheral vision too. But...
You actually have to turn your head and
you're so high up too, you can't see that far down.
Looking down on everybody as you do.
As you do.
Yeah. Oh, speaking of this, your friend Bob mentioned. Here we go. Were you always doing the crossword, Nick? Weren't you the one that was always doing the crossword?
That's a bit highbrow for me, crosswords.
Word search. Word search.
Yeah.
No, this was more of my standard.
No wonder he didn't see the end of the runway. Okay. All right. Well, anything else to say on that?
Nope.
All right.
Don't do it again. All
right. Good idea. Good advice. All right. Another one from the Aviation Herald, another final report. This is a PEL Saab 340 Alpha Freighter, PEL Air, on behalf of Rex Regional Express in Australia. Registration Victor Hotel, Kilo Delta Kilo, performing freight flight 9982 from Wagga Wagga to...
It might be my favorite city name ever.
I like it. To Charleville, Queensland, Australia. It was en route at flight level 220, about 70 nautical miles northwest of Cobar, when the crew received a smoke indication on board of the aircraft, followed shortly by smoke appearing in the cabin and cockpit. Okay, this is a bad thing. When you have the smoke indication warning and you actually see smoke entering the cabin and cockpit, you need to get the airplane on the ground. The crew performed an emergency descent to 6,000 feet, turned around and diverted to Cobar, and landed on Cobar's runway 23 about 14 minutes after leaving flight level 220. Yeah, quick. Emergency services needed to dismantle parts of the aircraft to extinguish the fire. There were no injuries. The aircraft sustained substantial damage, however, and I think I do have a picture of this substantial damage. Let's see, why don't we add that to the stage? There we go. Yeah, a little crispy and charred.
Oh, wow.
Kind of looks like AJ's barbecue out back a little bit.
Well, no, it's very appetizing, AJ, if that's what your barbecue looks like. Bleh.
Well, I mean, the stuff that heats up and the charcoal, to cook the food.
Okay.
Not the food itself. Although those burnt ends did look a lot like that.
They looked a lot like that, but I bet they tasted better.
Oh, they tasted really good. I can vouch for that. If you're wondering what the heck we're talking about, we'll talk about it in the Getting to Know Us segment. Anyway, let's see. Cobar firefighters reported today our crew responded to an incident at the Cobar airport where an aircraft carrying freight had to make an emergency landing. Smoke indicator alerted the pilots of smoke on board, and shortly after the cabin started filling with smoke, crews arrived to find smoke issuing from the right side of the aircraft under the wing area. Fire and rescue crews quickly got to work dismantling the plane to locate the source of the fire and extinguish. The batteries were quickly isolated, as initially thought it was caused by an electrical harness. After a second inspection inside the aircraft, it was found to have significant damage to the flooring in which the fire had started. The floor was removed and checked for further signs of heat and determined safe. The aircraft was secured, ventilated, and the site handed over to the aircraft staff. The final report concluded that it was likely an electrical component of a control circuit board on the recirculating fan failed, resulting in an in-flight fire under the cabin floor. The smoke curtain was not fitted as required for the cargo configuration, and the flight deck door was open, which allowed smoke from the in-flight fire to enter the flight deck. The underfloor fire caused weakening of the fuselage structure, which led to a subsequent depressurization of the aircraft during the descent. However, the depressurization aided in the removal of enough smoke from the flight deck on approach to allow an unhindered visual approach at Cobar.
Wow, that was a fortunate circumstance, wasn't it?
Self-correcting problem.
Exactly. The crew, this is a significant finding. The crew was not familiar with the cargo configuration and were unaware of the smoke curtain requirements and location of the cross valve handle. Not sure exactly what the cross valve handle is or what it does.
I was going to ask you guys that, but
no, I don't. I've never heard of that.
Well, it was something they had to pull during the emergency drill, and they didn't know where it was.
Oh yeah, here you go. The next paragraph mentions that flight crew, the Pell Air and Rex Saab 340 flight crew operating manuals did not include reference to the location and operation of the cross valve handle or the operation and use of the smoke curtain. Well, that's a problem. We need to know that. Rex did not ensure its flight crews received training in the differences between passenger and freight configured Saab 340 aircraft prior to being scheduled to fly flight operations. And Saab did not include the smoke curtain fitment in pre-flight documentation for the cargo configured Saab 340 aircraft to inform flight crew of this difference from the passenger configured version.
Yeah, apparently the handle aids in the removal of smoke from the flight deck. So and they were unable to find it because of the density of the smoke and the lack of prior knowledge. So they couldn't find the handle, therefore delaying the removal of smoke from the flight deck.
Hey, Bob. Yeah. You know where the cross valve handle is? The what?
The what?
What are you talking about? Yeah.
It's a worry, isn't it?
It is. It is. But as you mentioned, it was very fortunate that the fire kind of caused that depressurization and that sucked all the smoke out of there so they could see. That's pretty scary, actually.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right. Let's continue with this one, another final report on Aviation Herald. This was Ryanair Boeing 737-8 MAX. Well, there's your problem.
Well, that and Ryanair.
Yeah, that two together is
There's a lot going on.
at London on December 4th of 2023, so a little over, almost exactly a year ago, a year and 2 days ago. A rapid descent during a go-around. The Ryanair Boeing 737-8 MAX was performing Flight 1269 from Klagenfurt, Austria to London Stansted, was on final approach to Stansted's runway 22, descending through about 1,900 feet MSL at about 145 knots. over the ground about 3.2 nautical miles before the runway threshold at 11:03 local time when the crew initiated a go-around due to an unstabilized approach. The aircraft accelerated, climbed through about 4,000 feet at 197 knots over the ground when the aircraft began to rapidly descend to 2,175 feet within 17 seconds, accelerating to 280 knots over the ground, climbed and descended a second time, reaching a minimum height of about 1,700 feet. The aircraft subsequently climbed to and stabilized at 3,000 feet, positioned for another approach, and landed without further incident about 12 minutes after the initiation of the go-around. The British AAIB reported they have opened an investigation stating high speed and high nose down pitch attitude during go-around, London Stansted. On the 21st of November, they released their final bulletin concluding the probable causes of the serious incident were, the serious incident occurred because the missed approach altitude, MAA, was not set in the mode control panel before a go-around was performed. Okay, that's a no-no. It was not set to the missed approach altitude because the flight crew were attempting to intercept the glide slope from above. Okay, this required the MCP selected altitude to be set at a height below the aircraft, and the MCP selected altitude was not adjusted to the missed approach altitude following the decision to go around before it was executed. Yeah, I don't know about you, Nick, but I mean, one of the first things that we do when we initiate a go around procedure is set or recheck missed approach altitude and heading, just to make sure that everything's set up properly so you don't encounter this kind of a situation, especially when your autoflight system is flying the miss. You want to make sure you have all the...
it is very important. But I don't think we had a specific statement. We certainly had a check of missed approach altitude at 1,000 feet. So 1,000 feet missed approach altitude set was one of our calls.
Yeah, you're right. That may have been... I think it may have been just an added thing that some of us would do if we were initiating the miss. But you're right. It was SOP that at 1,000 feet, that's when you start really talking about what's going on and what you intend to do, and making sure that things are set properly. You're right.
Yeah. But it was probably one of the most troublesome maneuvers that we would perform during an approach would be an intercept of the glide slope from above. We've had a lot of incidents because of, it's an unusual thing to do, and it is usually because you've got a bit of a rushed approach, which itself leads to problems. And it was common for people to just put the aircraft into an open descent, which is very dangerous because there's no capturing of some of the safety factors and no adjustment of the speed to give you a safe margin when you do that. So, we had to have a whole procedure of what we're allowed to set when we were doing an intercept from above. So as soon as you start doing those, everyone's hackles used to rise a little bit. Mine certainly did anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Here are some worries, in my opinion. The approach and go around were flown in instrument meteorological conditions, IMC, and hence the pilots had no external visual references. During the go around, the pilot flying was fixated on the flight directors did not recognize that they did not command a level off at the MAA, the missed approach altitude, until it had flown through it. You can't, I know these are situations where you're not normally used to being in unless you're in the simulator and training. A lot of things are happening and you're feeling things that you normally don't feel. But you cannot fixate on the flight director steering bars, because you have to keep your crest check going and look at your altimeter and all these other, important instruments, airspeed, altitude, etc. You just can't focus on the flight directors, because sometimes the flight directors won't tell you exactly the right thing to do.
Absolutely, yeah. And it also indicates to me that when you're under pressure and you are starting to struggle a little bit. Your sort of attitude, your vision, it's not a physical thing, but you tend to focus because you've narrowed your area of attention because you're having trouble processing all the information onto one aspect. In this case, the flight directors. If you are well ahead of the aircraft and in a more relaxed situation, you are sitting back and you are seeing everything that's going on around you. So it indicates to me that the captain or whoever was flying the airplane at that time was struggling with being overloaded.
Yep. So now they've gone through the altitude, 4,000 feet. No, actually, I think they were supposed to stop at 3, and they got up to 4,000 feet. The subsequent recovery maneuver from the level bust was probably exacerbated by the thrust levers being moved from a high power setting to idle, resulting in an excessive nose-down attitude, rate of descent, and indicated airspeed for the aircraft's configuration. Given the aircraft's height during this descent, the enhanced ground proximity warning system was triggered just after the commander had initiated a pitch up into a climb back to the missed approach altitude. So the part that was really kind of concerning to me was when they made the correction after having climbed through the altitude that they were supposed in the missed approach altitude. Where's the pitch attitude and rate of descent? I should have
rate of descent's on that picture, 8,800 feet a minute.
Yeah,
I tried to go back down. That seems excessive.
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit.
These poor Ryanair folks got their money's worth on this flight. It's quite the roller coaster.
That must have been quite a ride. Let's see. When the commander recognized he needed to lower the nose, which he initially set between 5 and 10 degrees nose down. I mean, that's even a lot, actually. The subsequent nose down attitude was probably a result of the push on the control column, a nose down trim input, and a pitch power couple when the thrust levers were closed from a high power setting to idle.
Yeah, I found the bit you're looking for, Jeff. The maximum pitch nose down was 17.7 degrees.
What?
Whoa.
A lot of ground in that windscreen.
Horrible.
I'm sorry. You probably wouldn't see very much blue in your primary flight display with 17.7 degrees nose down. That's horrible. Airspeed 300 knots. Yeah, almost 300 knots.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
To say that he'd kind of lost it at this point would be a slight understatement, I think.
Yeah.
Understatement, yes.
Absolutely.
So, what do we say?
He really effed this up, is what I'd say.
Yeah, I think you're
it's
right.
not gone well.
Not gone well
at all. No.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Peter,
So I'm looking for some things here to mitigate why he did this, and of course with your engines in pods slung under the wings, there are going to be changes in pitch every time you change thrust. So by throttling back, the aircraft was being pitched up when you got power on. By throttling back, the aircraft is going to pitch down. If you at that point are pitching down as well using the flight controls, that's going to combine. But the whole point of when you're maneuvering the airplane is you do it with reference to the attitude indicator. So you set a new attitude, trim the airplane so it stays there, and then you recommence your scan around to make sure you know what the other instruments are indicating correctly for what you want. And it seems to me like he had kind of stopped reading the instruments. I don't know exactly what the situation was going on in his head, but it worries me a little.
Yeah. So control performance is, you should always know, and I think that this is being lost somewhere. You have to know, you have to be able to fly the airplane without flight directors and all these other aids, which are important aids and they're for safety. But you can't be so dependent on them that when they give you perhaps bad information or they completely leave you, you have to know that in this situation, I'm going to put the pitch angle up, 12.5 degrees or 15 degrees or whatever. And I'm going to set this power setting. That's controlling. And then you look at your performance instruments, your altimeter and your airspeed indicator and all these other things to confirm that what you did with your primary flight display or your attitude indicator is actually doing what you expected that it's going to do. And
trust but verify.
Yes, exactly. So and it seems to me that now in this situation, I'm sure there was a lot going on. They weren't expecting to do a go around. They were behind the airplane, and that's the whole point of them doing the go-around was it was an unstabilized approach. So before they even initiated the go-around, they were already unstabilized, and it just continued to be unstabilized and getting worse. And you just have to kind of shake yourself out of it and go back to the basics. And that's the thing that's most concerning to me, that they seem to be just way behind the airplane all throughout this entire thing until they finally recovered from the 17 degrees nose low and 8,800 feet per minute descent. They weren't very high above the ground. Mind you, they were doing an instrument approach, and they're only 1,500 feet above the ground or so, 2,000 feet above the ground. I'm not sure the exact height of the elevation.
I think ground was 400-ish feet because it was 21 and 16 or something like that, or maybe a little bit less.
Okay. Yeah, this is definitely a concerning incident, and
yeah, I mean it was affecting them both as well, because the first officer was the pilot monitoring. He was supposed to make calls when you get to excesses. For example, when the speed became excessive, he's supposed to call that to bring it to the attention of his captain, and there was a requirement for him to call speed at 195 knots, plus, which is V-fly plus 10. I'm quite sure what that is. But he didn't call it till there were 40 knots over that speed. So he's obviously startled by the, I think probably the abruptness and the exaggerated maneuvers that were being flown. And so he was distracted from doing his job. So that both of them aren't really struggling to cope with the situation. They've put themselves, I might stress that, put themselves in.
I like the way this words this. It says the co-pilot was experiencing some form of startle and surprise by the dynamic nature of the maneuver, meaning the
exactly. Yes.
Very dynamic.
Yeah. Also, I noticed maneuver spelled funny. Very strange.
It's spelled
properly.
Properly. It's spelled properly.
Yeah.
That's what the word you were looking for. So there was no suggestion of a cinematographic illusion, but they did say that it is. It wasn't a perceived visual illusion. So it's unlikely that the commander experienced spatial disorientation. They don't say what they thought would have caused it, though, but other than the fact that the commander was taken aback by the level bust, and made a significant pitch down. So,
well, it also seems like there was a significant acceleration too, because they went from 140 something knots to 235 pretty quickly. So,
well, once they did pitch down, I don't think he made any attempt to concern himself about the speed. He just let the speed run away.
I'm talking about on the initial go around.
Oh, right. Okay.
It seemed like it. I'm trying to find it again, but I remember seeing in there that it was pretty quick. Here we go. So they were doing 197 knots over the ground within 17 seconds, accelerating to 280 knots. I guess that's not that fast of an acceleration. I mean,
but it's only a 737.
Yeah, well. And it's a max. Yeah,
it is a max.
Well, it's got those big engines.
But just thinking of what you were saying, the cinematographic illusion, that could have been that acceleration gives you that feeling that you're pitching up. So maybe that increased his reason for nose down, or his feeling that he had to put the nose down. I don't know.
But I think they're probably discounting that because at the time he was throttling back, so it would have been the reverse of an acceleration. illusion. But I don't know. They've obviously looked at it a lot more than I've had time to.
Well, I'd say the whole thing was a mess.
It was, Jeff. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was a serious incident. I mean, this aircraft was, I won't say it was out of control, but it was performing maneuvers that could easily have caused it, to strike the ground.
So they were only, 12 or at that rate of descent, 12 or 15 seconds from crater. So
Exactly.
Okay. Well, I'm glad that we were able to cover it and, point out the importance of, doing the proper control and performance. And I don't know, there's a moral to this story for sure. And that's why we thought it important to talk about it on the show. So don't do that. That would be my advice. Don't do this, what they did. Don't do it.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I would imagine that they probably availed themselves to some more simulator training to go through some go-around procedures. Yeah. All right.
We've just got another one here, which you're not supposed to do. It's press that button. You weren't supposed to press.
The button
no
that
good pilot should ever press.
Yeah. Well, if you do, you should know which button you're pressing. Okay. This is again from the Aviation Herald, another final report. This incident occurred on the 6th of September in 2023. There was an in-flight upset. Why? Well, let me tell you why. A Virgin Australia Boeing 737-800, registration Victor Hotel Yankee Quebec Romeo, performing flight 336 from Brisbane to Melbourne, Australia, was en route when a flight attendant requested access to the cockpit. Okay, there you go. It's the flight attendant's fault. The captain, pilot monitoring, so the first officer is flying, the captain is pilot monitoring, attempted to open the door, but instead of pressing the relevant button activated, I should be a comma there, but instead of pressing the relevant button, comma, he activated the rudder trim, causing an in-flight upset requiring the first officer to apply significant right aileron to prevent the aircraft from rolling left until the trim exceeded aileron authority. The aircraft rolled left to a maximum of 42 degrees left bank before the captain, upon the first officer's request, help, you have the airplane, checked the rudder trim. Oh, no, he didn't do that. Checked the rudder trim and discovered the problem. The aircraft returned to normal flight, continued to Melbourne for a landing without further incident. One flight attendant received minor injuries. The final report.
You can just hear that conversation.
Yeah.
Would you mind terribly just checking that rudder trim?
Exactly. Excuse me.
Yeah.
Would you check
Smart
that, please?
first officer actually working out what had gone wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm impressed with that.
Too bad he didn't work it out a little bit earlier before he lost.
Before the steep turn?
Perhaps he wasn't expecting his captain to do that, but there you go.
Yeah, so while actually a request for entry to the flight deck, the pilot monitoring misselected the rudder trim switch instead of the intended flight deck door switch.
Do you want to see that slide now?
Rudder trim for about 8 seconds. If you'll put the first one up, Liz. So here we have the view of the cockpit and the primary flight displays up front, the mode control panel, and then if you go down further, you have the throttle quadrant, and then even further down in the center pedestal, in the very back, the aft part of the center pedestal, you'll see, and if you'll go to the next one, Liz. There we go. That's the back end of the center pedestal, where you see the rudder trim control knob and the flight deck door switch. And I'm not sure if the captain looked down at all, or if he did, he somewhere between his hand moving toward it and actually touching it and activating the switch instead of hitting that one over there on the far right, a much smaller switch.
Differently shaped.
Yeah, differently shaped and much smaller. He grabbed that bigger knob, and it's round, and just started to the left, just started moving to the left, because if you look at the flight deck door switch, to unlock that flight deck door, you twist it to the left a little bit and hold it there, and that unlocks the door. If you do the same with the rudder trim control switch, guess what happens? Well, the rudder moves. Actually, the rudder trim moves, and then that moves in turn the rudder, and that causes the airplane to start feeling a little weird. I don't know if you've been in an airplane when you felt the yaw damper fail or whatever, and all of a sudden the airplane's gets this really weird kind of side-by-side motion. The wiggles, yeah. And that was all happening, and I'm assuming, if I remember correctly, the autopilot was on. The autopilot's trying to adjust the bank angle to, keep the airplane on its course. And it gets to a point finally, if you'll move to the, I think the fourth slide, Liz, kind of shows where the roll authority ends. At the left side, the 75% autopilot authority, and then on the right side, 100% autopilot authority. And it's not a lot, to as far as bank angle used to offset some asymmetric rudder inputs. And it finally got to the point where it goes, nah, that's all I can do. And then I think it turned off and said, you have the airplane. And then all hell broke loose because the airplane was just way out of trim in the longitudinal axis, with the rudder trim almost full left, I believe. Anyway, excuse me. Let me read a little bit more of the report. So the captain applied that rudder trim for about 8 seconds. Long time. He's probably thinking, why is the door not open?
Why haven't they opened the door yet?
Right. What's going on here? What's taking her so long? I'm holding this and of course the co-pilot's going like, well, everything feels weird. What is going on? Why is the airplane why is it banking? What's going on here?
Still turning.
Yeah, the autopilot responded to the trim input and its consequential yaw and roll with the application of opposing roll. The maximum roll that the autopilot could apply and maintain was reached after 5 seconds of left rudder trim input, after which the continuing rudder trim input resulted in a rapidly increasing rate of roll and the in-flight upset. Let's see. During the period of the development and recovery from the upset, and despite the need to use a large right wing down aileron input to maintain an approximate wings level attitude, the flight crew were not able to promptly identify the significant left yaw as the primary initiator of the upset, which in turn delayed the restoration of balanced flight. So, you're sitting and looking at it going like, why is the control yoke like turning to the right? It's turning to the right even more. Now it's like 38 degrees. That's a lot. I mean, that thing would be like cranked over to the right pretty good. and not, as you said, Captain Nick, at least at some point, the first officer realized that maybe there's something going on with the rudder trim.
Yeah.
And he asked but by then
I'm wondering what happens to their rudder pedals when you apply trim. So if you've just got your feet resting on them and you start putting in your trim, do the rudder pedals move in harmony with that, in response to that?
I don't think that if they do, they don't move that much, I believe. I think they may have addressed that in this report at some point. I think I remember reading something about that. I'm kind of scrolling down to see if I can find that. Okay.
I mean, if it was an Airbus, we've got these little berthing stirrups that we can rest our feet on, that are above the rudder pedals to put yourself in a more relaxed pose, with the seat back and your feet up. So if you don't necessarily have your feet on the rudder pedals, but we don't actually do that unless we're just sitting there.
Yeah, that's not something that we do in a normal situation. We don't have our feet on the rudder pedal in this stage or mode of, or whatever, this realm. When the first officer requested the pilot monitoring the captain to check the rudder trim, it was 70 seconds, 1 minute, 10 seconds after the initial misapplication of the rudder trim. That was a long time for them to figure that out. While large right-wing down aileron input required to maintain a wings level attitude provided a strong indicator, that the upset was linked to a yaw-related issue, a combination of the very small displacement of the rudder pedals at the point of maximum trim application. So I guess they didn't move very much. And the pilot flying's limited experience on the aircraft probably contributed to some of the delay in identifying the unintended rudder trim.
How about the yaw indicator, though? I mean, wouldn't that have been stuck out to one side?
I mean, I don't think you even have to get that far to look for that. I mean, the yoke is like all the way over to the right. That should be a very strong indication that something is not right. And even the way the airplane feels, I mean, I've been in a situation where even the yaw damper is not working properly, and it's just like very, very tiny movement of the rudder, the tail in the back, and you can go like, oh, I mean, this isn't an airplane with, tail-mounted engines. So, it takes quite a bit for you to feel that, and when you do, you go, this does not feel right. It feels like we're all wishy-washy up here and the thing's about to let loose and crash. So it's very disturbing. iHall Boxes says the 737 rudder trim repositions the rudder feel and centering unit, which adjusts the rudder neutral position. Oh, okay. So I see they did that probably. So you're in an engine out situation. You've applied a lot of rudder trim to get to the point where you can have a relatively wings level yoke position. And so to aid in that, the feel, rudder feel and centering unit adjusts to a more neutral position. That makes sense. But it doesn't work out very well in this situation.
Tim Van Ram also has a comment.
Tim Van Ram says from our audience, you'd think the pinball display would have activated tilt.
Yeah.
Bad move.
But when that happens, doesn't everything shut down? I mean, everything goes stop. The power goes off and you can't play anymore.
Oh, that's true.
I think that would be some kind of a buzzer.
Oh, boy. Yeah, they F this one up as well.
Yeah, and I tell you what, in mitigation, I would say, he probably reached across and felt he was sure he'd grab what he wanted to. But the fact is that he's the pilot monitoring. He's not the one flying the airplane. So what is to prevent him from looking down to see what he's grabbed hold of?
No kidding.
Aren't they supposed to check some sort of camera as well before they open?
I don't think most of those jets don't have cameras to check.
He wanted to look at the flight attendant when she came in.
We used to have to look back at the camera screen above the cockpit door. And because you're turned around looking back anyway, you might as well look down at this button you're going to press. Because for us, it was a button, not a turn knob like they've got. So it didn't replicate. Well, actually, it did replicate the rudder trim that centered the rudder trim, the button you pressed, during an approach if you wanted to take all the rudder trim out. So it was identical to that and near that, but that wasn't ever going to cause a problem in when you're flying along normally.
Unless you're up and you have an engine out and you've got a whole bunch of rudder trim and you accidentally hit the button, that could be a problem.
In which case, what the hell's the cabin crew doing trying to get
no kidding.
Flight
Yeah, you don't need to come up here. We'll just communicate over the
We're busy.
We're busy.
Yeah.
Interesting this though, isn't it? Interesting.
Yep, sure is. Next one for already, Aviation Herald again. And this involves an accident of Finnair, Oyji, ATR 72-212 Alpha. Let's see, this happened on the 12th of November, 2024. They were flying from Kuusamo to Helsinki, completed an uneventful flight with a safe landing on Helsinki's runway 15, taxied to the apron. During disembarkation, it's not easy for me to say. During disembarkation, when they were getting off, a passenger leaned on the handrail, which collapsed. The passenger fell face down onto the tarmac and sustained serious injuries.
Ouch.
That's no good. Let's see. Finland's Accident Investigation Board, the Onnettomuistutkeskus.
Onnettomuistutkeskus.
Pretty damn close, I'd say.
Nailed
Very
it.
good.
Where is my bell? Come on,
We'll
here
give
we
you.
go.
We'll give you over 50% for that.
Nope, I'm sorry, the wrong one. 50% at least.
Yeah, at least 50%.
Yeah, the rated that organization, Accident Investigation Board, rated the occurrence an accident, opened an investigation. The only reason why we're covering this, honestly, is because Liz wanted me to try to pronounce this Finnish word, Onnettomuistutkeskus, or
should have quit while you were ahead.
Yeah.
Onnettomuistutkeskus.
I did it better than she did, I'd say. Okay. Yeah, she sounded better. Yeah. Okay, and then finally, let's end this news segment on a down note.
Oh, no.
Yeah, let's see. This is from the NewYorkTimes.com. After beloved pilot dies in crash, or beloved, I guess would be the best way to say that, 2 rescue dogs rescue themselves. Liz, if you'll put a picture of this gentleman here, Suk Kim, who leaves behind his wife and 3 children, had begun flying on animal rescue missions in recent years, his brother said. When a pilot on an animal rescue mission died in a plane crash in upstate New York, a dog he was transporting also died, but 2 others survived, including one that was found in a snowy hole he had dug with broken legs.
Oh, my Lord. Oh, my heart breaks.
Yeah. Suk Kim, the pilot, 49 years old, was traveling to Albany with 3 dogs from Maryland when he crashed on Sunday in Windham, New York, about 35 miles from Albany in the Catskill Mountains, according to authorities. Peter Kuzminski, the Greene County sheriff, said Mr. Kim had experienced poor visibility during the flight and had requested permission to change his altitude because of turbulence. The sheriff said that the authorities subsequently received a no-voice 911 call from Mr. Kim's phone about 6:10 p.m., followed by calls from the Air Force and an Albany airport saying that Mr. Kim's plane had disappeared off their radars. It was a Mooney M20J. They found it amid a large area of debris on the escarpment trail. Its wings were detached and its cockpit and tail were severely damaged. It took rescue teams hours to hike through about a foot of snow in the dark to find the plane. The rescuers found 2 survivors nearby. Pluto, an 18-month-old Yorkshire Terrier mix, was found on a mountain ridge with minor injuries. And then Whiskey, a Labrador Retriever mix, was found in the hole he had dug despite being injured, the broken legs. Whiskey was taken to an animal hospital for treatment. Let's see. Mr. Kim's wife, Anna Kang, wrote on Facebook that she was heartbroken, but that her husband, with whom she had 3 children, had gained his angel wings, doing what he loved. His older brother, Sejin Kim, sounded distraught as he recalled Suk's smile when they joked together last week. "See you later," was the final thing he remembered his brother saying. The family immigrated to the United States from Seoul, Korea in 1985. The brothers grew up doing most things together, including racing motorcycles. He said his brother always had a passion for speed, took up flying during the COVID-19 pandemic. As he learned how to navigate the skies, Suk Kim connected with other pilots who volunteered for animal rescue groups. He began trying to save animals by helping nonprofits fly them out of kill shelters. We're all going to miss him a lot. He just loved the air, altitude, speed, and freedom of flying. So he worked with a couple different organizations, Pilots and Paws, Happily Forever After Rescue in Connecticut. That's a cute name. The president of that organization, Happily Forever, F-U-R, ever, said she had cried more than she thought she ever could when she learned of his death. Anyway, very sad.
You might mention that Hillel flies those flights, Jeff.
Oh, yeah, we should mention that I'm sure there are many of you out there listening to our show who perform these kind of missions, but somebody in particular that is with us every week on the show. Yeah, I can hear him. He's already in the shower. Yeah. Hillel is someone who does these animal rescue missions quite a bit. And in fact, I think on one of them, he fell in love. He probably falls in love every time he does one of these missions, but he fell in love
With
so
Tango.
badly. What was the name?
Tango.
Tango. He named the dog that he really just couldn't live without, and he's become part of their family. So Hillel is a very kind-hearted guy, and he does this kind of work as well. So, yeah.
So this happened in the Catskill Mountains, and I think after what that Labrador managed to do, it ought to be now called the Dogskill Mountains.
But they're not killed.
Or, well, skill, maybe.
Skill.
The dog skill. Okay, good.
No,
I like it. Dog
I wasn't
skill.
going to do the dog kill.
Not kill.
Dog's
I like
kill,
it.
man. That wouldn't have been very nice.
Yeah.
Got it.
Now, dogs kill cats, so maybe that's why it still might be appropriate. No, I don't know why I said that.
Well,
dogs don't
in
kill
my
cats.
experience, cats,
Yeah, cats usually have the upper-
survive, and dogs end up with bleeding noses. But
Yeah,
right.
I think you're right. I think the cats usually have the upper paw.
they certainly do. Yeah.
Let's get to know you guys.
All right, time
Moving
to...
swiftly on.
Yes, moving swiftly. Moving swiftly. Here we go. Boom,
Before we
boom.
dig another hole for
Yep.
ourselves.
Another snowy hole. It's time to get to know us, where we find out what's been happening between hosts, between shows. That's what I meant to say. So, let's see. Captain Nick, you had a very interesting mission yesterday, I believe. Or was it the day before?
I did. And I don't know if Bob is still in the audience, but the fine fellow who I have mentioned in the last few shows, who has his own podcast, Leading for Life, that's number 4, Leading for Life, had arranged to interview a fascinating chap. And he very kindly invited me along to share the interview, and from that I'll be able to create some plain tales. And this is just a little teaser, because the fine chap we interviewed was a marvelous World War II pilot called Colin Bell, and he flew Mosquitoes during the Second World War and was on a squadron that provided pathfinders for Bomber Command. And you have to listen to this, because it is the most wonderful interview I think I've ever been part of.
Nick, tell everybody how old he is.
Colin is remarkable, because he was quite a young man when he was in the war, of course, but that was now a long time ago. And he is now aged 103, and he will celebrate his 104th birthday in March next year. So he's in fine fettle for a gentleman of any age, let alone that 103. So we interviewed him in the RAF club. I grabbed a train. He had been at a formal dinner the night before and given a speech there. And we, after the interview, we took some pictures of him. Now that there's, if you look at the show notes, you'll see that we've got pictures of him beside a painting in the RAF club of a mosquito. It's not just any mosquito. The painting was done for him, and it's of his mosquito. And Colin very kindly donated that painting to the RAF club, and it now adorns its walls with many fabulous paintings there that feature the history of the Royal Air Force. And there on the left in that particular image is Bob, Leading for Life podcast, which is a great podcast. He hasn't been doing it for very long, but he's already reached a fantastic standard and has done interviews with some of the world's most fascinating people, all in the thought of improving people's leadership skills in industry mainly. And afterwards we sat down and had a beautiful meal in the main restaurant in the RAF club, which was absolutely fabulous. And I'll let you know, I had smoked salmon with capers, followed by pheasant and red cabbage, and I'm trying to remember, the pheasant was in pastry. It was absolutely fabulous.
Wow.
But it wasn't
Anyway.
under glass.
The other gentleman at the table is Mark, who is an ex-army officer, I think, and a lawyer who is now accompanies Colin around the world, around the country and around the world on his various talks he gives. And of interest, Colin will be coming to the United States in early February next year. So I think it's going to be around the 9th of February, but he is being flown out by an aviation organization in California. And I'll have more details, but I don't have the exact details yet, so I'm not going to try and remember or guess. But if you are interested in meeting him or seeing him in the flesh, as it were, and hearing his fantastic talk, you'll be able to do so in the United States early in next year, early 2025. And as a little teaser, I have a short excerpt from Colin's interview, if we could possibly play that, Jeff.
Mm-hmm. But on the way back, and this was our first trip, we passed over Emden, and this was the only occasion I think my navigator let me down. And of course, we looked ahead and we saw some flashes in the sky, and my navigator, Doug, said to me, I wonder what they're shooting at, you see. Well, next moment, the Emden, you probably realise, is a naval base, and the naval gunners were absolutely shit hot. And they hammered away at us, and it caused me an enormous amount of alarm, and I put the aircraft into a dive, and we dropped down from about 25,000 feet to 10,000 feet, and I think we exceeded all known safety limits for a mosquito. In fact, I had the devil's own job pulling it out of dive.
Before you complain about his language, you misunderstood what he said. It was a device that the Navy gunners use called a shitot. S-H-I-T-O-T. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. So anyway, he's a real character. He's full of life, full of funny stories. He's a great raconteur. It was an absolute pleasure to meet him, and I want to thank Bob again for including me in that interview. It was absolutely fabulous, and it'll be one of the great memories I will carry me through for the rest of my life, was meeting Colin Bell in person.
Yes. Yeah, I don't know if you showed this
now. Yeah, I'm going to just mention that Bob, who is in the audience today, reminds me that his podcast with the entirety of that interview should be released by him on the 15th of December, and that'll be about when my first plane tale, which I'm going to break up sections. I'll just do a little 20-minute excerpts of the chat, which went on for a wonderfully long time. As the next few plane tales, which will be brilliant. And I'll bring my first one out around the same time.
Very good. All right. Anything else you want to add to your
nothing else has happened
escapades?
Really for me. That was it has eclipsed everything that has occurred to me this week. But if I could just perhaps mention the artwork, is that an appropriate time?
That'd be a great idea.
We had a few suggestions, like a 132 hamster-powered wheelchair. I'm not quite sure if I could have got an AI to produce all 132, or anyone was going to count them.
Who's going to count, right?
Yeah, exactly. We had Turkey Bomb, the hamsters run free, and red vehicles. But the one I went for was Disco in the Cockpit. And there's our two disco stars. I didn't think Jeff would probably be up for doing me a disco pose, but the two youngsters, Rick and Steph.
Disco. That would have been perfect.
Yeah.
Long before these two kids, were born, right?
Indeed. But we've got Steph is wearing a particularly fetching outfit, I thought, actually. And they're in amongst the pink fog and the glitter ball of a classic disco. And the show title, of course, Cockpit Disco. If you're interested in trying to find the number, well, I didn't really make much of an effort to hide it. Just look for the reflections on the glitter ball, and the logo is on the front of Steph's hat. So there you go.
We should mention the fog is coming from because of the cargo.
Yes, we were. This idea came from dangerous goods and cargo. We were talking about carbon dioxide and its placement on board aircraft, and we were talking about, we'll just keep the carbon dioxide. I mean, the dry ice in the cockpit, and then we'd said, it kind of looks like Halloween, and then or a disco, and that's how we came up with this idea about disco in the cockpit. That was pretty clever.
Yeah, brilliant.
I thought it was
beautiful,
funny.
beautiful artwork.
It's great.
Oh, thank you, sir. Thank you. Looking forward to next or this one. We're going to have some good titles, I hope.
Okay, I hope so too. All right. Well, I will start the segment. AJ and I. Well, I'm not starting the segment. I'm continuing the segment with telling you about this wonderful party to which I was invited by the gentleman right there here with us today, AJ Schramm. He, let's see, a couple of episodes ago, I believe it was, when we recorded an episode in the basement or your studio of your home. And then while I was there, they said, "Hey, I don't know what you're doing Sunday of Thanksgiving weekend, but we do this thing every year called Friendsgiving, and we would like you to attend." And then so I kind of waited to hear anything about this invitation, and never got the invitation. So I had to contact AJ and
I had to mail it to South Dakota and then wait for it to get rerouted.
No, I think it was an electronic invitation that he neglected to add me to the list. Apparently, that's his story.
I'll talk to my staff about that.
Anyway, so I finally got the Evite and got to attend this wonderful party. And I just thought it was going to be a small, intimate group of people. But it was an intimate group of people, but it was not small. It was a very large gathering. How many were there, AJ?
I didn't really count. Usually it's about 30-ish people.
Your house was packed with people. It was, and they were all wonderful people. And
well, most of them anyway.
Well, yeah, most. And then AJ did he cooked up a storm, mostly meats, which is awesome. And then several people brought side dishes like mashed potatoes and green bean casserole, or maybe it was was it sweet potato casserole? I think I remember.
I think just about everything you can imagine on a holiday table. We had
exactly. And plenty of adult beverages, of course. And so AJ, tell us again remind me again what we talked about I guess before the show recording, we talked about, while we were talking about one of the news items, we were talking about the burnt ends.
Oh, yeah.
That some of it spilled upon your arm. Go ahead and show everybody your arm.
Oh, yeah. Got a
your
little
injury.
boo-boo.
Yeah, that's no good. That's a big burn from the juices from the burnt ends. But there were many, many items that he prepared on a barbecue apparatus.
Mm-hmm. Smoker.
There we go.
Yeah, meat's better smoked. But yeah, we did. Let's see, we did pulled pork. Did a whole Boston butt. Did a whole pork belly, which is what the burnt ends turned into, is called pork belly burnt ends. So it's not, if you're a barbecue aficionado, it's not actually a burnt end, but that's what they call them. But it's basically like little pieces of pork candy is what I call it, because it's a little glazed morsel of delicious pork.
Yes.
And then also obviously did a traditional turkey. So I think it was a 21 pound turkey this year. After I bought it and defrosted it and brined it and all that, and then my wife said, "I hope it fits in the oven."
Yeah, what was that? Where are you going to put that?
That's what she said.
I'm sure you hear that a lot.
Opened the oven and it had maybe about 3/4 of an inch with the bottom rack all the way down. So it was a close thing, but yeah, it turned out really well. Minor injuries aside, but had a lot of fun. Had a lot of close friends over and enjoyed it. And yeah, it was a blast. And by the way, I'm still waiting on my check for rigging the wine competition. By the way, it hasn't come in yet.
I did not. That was not rigged. And honestly, I was very, very surprised and pleased. So there was a wine competition. They said in the invitation, bring 2 bottles of wine, one of which will be placed in a burlap sack, and so you can't read the label. And
blind taste test.
The other, it was a blind taste test, and the other bottles will be set aside and will be part of the prize package. And so what you were to do was to, sample these wines, and each one had a number. And then at some point, it was time to, not everybody voted. There weren't that many votes.
I don't think everybody voted. Yeah.
Yeah. But so at the end of the evening, AJ tabulated the votes. And so I brought this wine, and I've talked about it on the show before. It's called Troublemaker by Austin somebody. It's a California red blend, which I just absolutely love. Troublemaker is a good name for it because if I have too much of it, I sometimes get into trouble. But anyway, I'm thinking, okay, that's what I'm going to bring because I want to see if anybody else thinks that this is good. It's not an expensive wine. It's here in the U.S., $13.99. It's a $14 bottle of wine. And I kind of went out on my way to find it. I went to a local big wine retailer called Total Wine, and they only had 1 bottle of it left. I'm thinking, that's kind of a good sign because all the other wine labels there they had plenty, but there was only 1 left of this one. And then I thought, well, I'll just settle for a different label that I had the gentleman help me with. And bought 2 of those bottles. But then the more I thought about it, I thought, I think I have time to swing by Costco because that's usually where I buy it. And just to check to see if they might have more than 1 bottle. And they did. And so I picked up a few bottles of it there from Costco. And so I entered that in the competition. And I think most of the bottles of wine ended up and you know what? When I was tasting all the different wines, AJ, I thought, God, these are at least as good or better than what I brought. But I thought, this is fun. And so when AJ was revealing the results of this wine competition or blind tasting, most of the bottles either got 0 or 1 vote. And he waited until the very end to reveal my wine. And it got, I think, 5 votes or something like
5
that.
5 or 6. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was something like 75% of the total votes cast.
I was blown
now
away.
It's going to be even harder to find.
Yeah. So the thing that was kind of encouraging for me is, you taste things, you think your taste buds are, calibrated properly or whatever. And the important thing with drinking anything really is if you like the way it tastes, then that's the only thing that really matters. But I thought, I wonder if anybody else thinks that this is any good. And so that kind of made me feel good. Like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one that thinks this is a pretty good wine. And it's a pretty affordable wine. So
very good.
We have another attendee there in the chat room.
Ben Singer was there. Yeah. Hey, Ben. It was a lot of fun, great food and fun. Yes, it was. Ben is one of the hosts of the Midlife Pilot podcast, correct?
That's correct.
All right. Very good.
As evidenced by my shirt.
Oh, there you go. Oh, I didn't even notice. Look at that. Midlife Pilot podcast. Anyway,
I know a guy.
You do. I learned that at Oshkosh. AJ knows a lot of people. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Whether they'll admit it or not.
Yeah, exactly. He got us places that most people don't have access, and had a private driver that would take us everywhere. It's like, who is this guy? Don't ask questions. All right. Any other updates, AJ, from you?
Little bit. So the day before Thanksgiving, I went and took my commercial written exam.
Ooh.
And passed it with a sufficient score. So,
excellent.
Well done. 100%, I'm sure.
Almost.
Good man.
And I have scheduled my commercial check ride for my commercial rating.
Nice.
Should be January the 7th, I think. 6th or 7th.
Okay.
It's whatever the
Oh,
Tuesday.
I thought you were going to be brave there and tell me it
Seventh
was
is a
January
Tuesday.
the 2nd.
Well, so funny story. When I went to go schedule this, my original scheduling date was New Year's Eve, was December 31st, and I thought it was going to be really cool to end the year as a commercial pilot. And then turns out that the examiner hadn't put in his vacation request yet, and suddenly he was like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to be gone until the 3rd or 4th or something." So had to reschedule for January, but only about a week difference or less than. So yeah, hopefully that will go well.
Well, we'll have our fingers firmly crossed for you.
We'll take anything crossed you can cross. Yeah, but
Well,
it's going to be interesting. It's a accelerated commercial school over in South Kakalaki, and so it's 3 straight days, sun up to sundown with one-on-one with an instructor, and then followed by a check ride. So pretty
brilliant.
intense.
You love everything with speed, so an accelerated course is perfect for you.
Seems appropriate. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So that's other than that, normal life. Just I will say, since I've left my previous job, being unemployed is really boring. Finding stuff to do is a challenge. I don't know how you guys are doing at retirement, but
disagree. I love being retired. And doing this show every week is a lot of work. I think that everybody, all the regulars here, can attest to that. And then the singing that I get involved with. I mean, honestly, I don't know when I had time to fly airplanes when I was flying airplanes. So, anyway,
How about you, Jeff?
So with me, okay, I wanted to mention something, and that is that I got an email from one of our community members, Jonathan, in Minneapolis. And he was listening to the last episode that I kind of hastily edited just to try to get it out a day late. Sorry, everybody, about that.
That was the party's fault.
Yeah, that party threw everything off for sure. But in my haste, I left a couple little fragments of some tracks that should not have been there, that should have been deleted. And so the one that I know of for sure, and it's quite abrasive, is right before the feedback bumper, you'll hear this record scratching sound. And that's what Jonathan was concerned about. And he said, I think there was another one somewhere. So he was going back to re-listen to see if he could find the other. And I do appreciate that. And I said jokingly to him, I need somebody to listen to my mix down or my final mix before I actually publish it, just to make sure there isn't something like that going to be published out there. And unfortunately, this one slipped through. And so here's the deal with this. In the past, I have the time that there was a plain tale being played, and then in the background on our private intercom channel, Captain Nick and Liz and I were having a conversation, which everybody could sort of hear in the midst of Captain Nick doing the plain tale. And that was obviously a mistake. And so I thought I need to redo that. So I removed the offensive track and repackaged it and did all the things that I normally do for each episode to publish. Let me tell you, that just caused more problems because the way podcasting works with the RSS feeds and all that kind of stuff going on behind the scenes, and how your Apple's podcast app and all the other apps out there kind of sometimes don't know that you've re-uploaded a file even though you haven't changed the name of it, and it just gets to be very complicated. And several people had mentioned that they were having trouble even downloading one of the episodes, and I think it was that one, because I ended up having to replace the file with another one. And I thought I did everything properly, but apparently that just confused all the audio podcast clients. And I thought, I'm not going to do that this time. So I apologize. You have to listen to the couple places maybe where there's some scratchy audio. I'll try to be better in the future. And Jonathan said, he said, to be honest, that's the reason why it kind of really stood out to me, because usually your mixes are so good that he was kind of surprised to hear this weird sound. And I said, yeah, I screwed it up. Sorry. So apologies, people. I'm not going to try to fix it. That's just going to be out there forever in podcast land. And as I said, I'll try to be better about making sure I don't release something that's hard to hear. Yeah, so that's
we need a volunteer who proofs it, Jeff. Who's going to do that job?
Yeah, so that's the thing for me is like I try to get these things published on Mondays, and if I were better about doing my workflow and my editing and everything else, I think that I might be able to get somebody to listen to the 2.5 hour, 3 hour show. Pardon me, Liz?
I can probably do it.
Oh, Liz said that she could do it. Okay. You'd have to listen very carefully.
Yeah, I can do that.
Okay. And it doesn't, no, the good thing is it doesn't happen too often where I screw up the edit. But anyway, so.
Just pretend you're breaking wind.
Yeah. Or as AJ mentioned earlier, he said it's just like I was trying to mimic like old fashioned radio, like an old time radio with the static and that kind of thing. And I think, yeah, that's it. It's a style choice is what I made there. So
okay, let's do the coffee fund. We've only got about half an hour left.
Coffee fund. Let's do that.
Johnny, how much more coffee?
No thanks.
I'll take it.
I love coffee. I love tea. I love the APG community. Coffee and tea and the Java and me. A cup, a cup, a cup, a cup, a cup.
Oh, yeah. The coffee fund. What's that, Jeff? Well, it's your way, dear listener, to support our show financially. And you can do that a couple of different ways, which you can find out about by going to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee on our website. So the first way is called the Coffee Fund Classic method, what I used when I started the Coffee Fund many, many years ago. And it's basically a PayPal donation page. And since the last episode, we had two fine gentlemen give us nice, generous contributions. Mazoots, Dr. Karim, and Ludger, who was in the live audience, and I think he probably still is. Ludger Humpert gave us a very, very generous contribution. I'm assuming that was a holiday gift or something to that effect. So thank you very much, Ludger. And he's with us in our live audience almost every episode. So we really, really love him. So thank you. The other way to support us is to become a patron of the show via patreon.com. And since the last episode, we have a new producer. Triple H is what he goes by. So thank you so much for signing up to be a patron. And we do have some feedback from Triple H. You're right, Liz. All right. So if you want to learn more, as I said, head over to airlinepilotguy.com/coffee. You'll be glad you did. And we will too.
Captain, incoming message.
All right, we're going to start off with a couple of audio feedback clips from the same person, Bill, in YYZ, or Toronto Pearson is the, I guess it would be Charlie Yankee, Yankee Zulu, or Zed, because it's Canada. APG 640 runway incursion and Bill's new aircraft at Acme North. Okay, so that's the subject of his feedback. And as I said, he included two audio files, and we're going to start with this first one here. So here we go.
Hi, Captain Jeff and APG crew. It's Bill in YYZ. I just wanted to give some feedback on episode 640 regarding the runway incursion between the Jazz CRJ and the Air India 777. So runway 15 left on paper is the threshold of 15 left on paper is actually higher elevation than the far end. So you would think it would be easy for the triple to see the RJ and vice versa. But the runway is must be very wonky, I guess, because when you start taking off on 15 left, you actually do this big uphill climb. And then clearly it must be all downhill after about a third or so down the runway. So the point is that the CRJ, I'm sure, could not have seen the 777 when he was beginning his takeoff roll. and the triple probably maybe even couldn't see the CRJ, which makes it, I guess, even more hazardous because it was really all about the controller timing things and hoping it worked out, I guess. But anyway, I just wanted to add that. Thanks. Have a good day.
Well, thanks, Bill. Yeah, that kind of reminds me a little bit of Nashville's runway 1331. Same kind of deal where it's a little, as Bill stated, wonky. It's not perfectly flat, and that sometimes hides certain, things happening on the runway from other vantage points. So that definitely makes sense, Bill. Someone who flies professionally out of that airport. That's his home airport, I believe. So, yeah, it makes sense. I like the wonky runway, though. I mean, that kind of reminds me of the undulating runway, which I guess wonky is just like a more exaggerated undulation. Would you say, Captain Nick?
Yeah, and it's got a lot of chocolate involved.
Oh yeah, wonky chocolate.
Yeah. And by the way, Nashville's runway could definitely not be flat because, after all, the music center of America, you wouldn't want anything flat.
Oh, good point. That deserves. Hang on, like this thing right here that I can get to really quickly. There, a rim shot, and very funny.
Just a short one. Yeah, that's fine.
Well, I mean, that's what they're used to.
Well, Bill's second clip will make Captain Nick happy.
Okay, the second audio from Bill is an update. So let's hear from Bill again.
Hi again, Captain Jeff and APG crew, and of course, fellow listeners. Just to completely, it's Bill in YYZ again, but just to completely OD on my feedback, and then I'll go quiet.
No.
I just wanted to let you know I changed airplanes just recently. I was kind of really excited about it. I spent the better part of the last 20 years flying the A320 at Acme North and decided that a change was in order, and I've switched over to the A330. The A330 for me is a really good choice. I'm completely indoctrinated into the Airbus ways, so I just wanted to keep things simple. I love the new routes. I love the airplane. It's amazing. And those triple spool Trents are a thing to behold. So anyway, really enjoying the new position. Just thought I'd let you know. And that's all for now. And keep up the good work. Thank you.
All right. Great feedback.
Yeah, nice job. Nice job, Bill. And I like the 330 as well. I have to say my heart still resides with 340, which was, a little bigger and more stable than the 330, which when I, converted onto it, I was just a bit surprised with, I guess, how fast it rolled. And I was used to a bigger, more substantial airplane. You needed to be a little more delicate handling it because it really did pitch fast and roll fast. So it was a great airplane. Of course, opens up a lot of wonderful destinations with its range. It goes forever. I agree. Great airplane. And may I just compliment you on your audio? We get a lot of audio feedback. And most people just seem to want to record in their car for some reason. And I can't think of a worse place to make an audio recording, but that sounds great. You're great audio. Thank you.
I didn't have to do a thing to it to try to fix it up a little bit. It was.
I think you should have put some car noises in the background.
Oh, I
to
should
make it
have.
sound better.
Maybe I'll do that for the audio only podcast.
More realistic.
I wrote to Bill and said, please keep sending in feedback. Let us know.
Yes, because he threatened he was going to be quiet, and Liz is saying that he wrote back to Bill and said, "Don't stop sending in your audio feedback. We love it." All right.
Exactly.
Speaking of someone who occasionally sends in audio feedback, this time it's just email feedback from our friend Vernon, Vernon Tryon. Let's see. So this showed up in my news feed from news.sky.com. He said, I thought I'd forward it to you in case you didn't see it. And it's about a civil plane going supersonic for the first time since Concorde. And it was from Science, Climate, and Tech News and Sky News. And he says, now in Portland, Oregon, trying to keep up with our almost 3-year-old granddaughter. The Southwest flight from Denver on Wednesday afternoon, November 20, through the so-called bomb cyclone was quite bumpy. The atmosphere was certainly churned up. APG 639 kept me company the whole way. Thanks. And again, that's Vernon Tryon, normally in Fort Morgan, Colorado, but now in the Portland, Oregon area, or at least he was when he sent this. So the article that he sent talks about Aurora is designed to fly to the edge of space twice a day and will reach more than 3 times the speed of sound, according to the company. And there's a picture showing the spacecraft, the MK or Mark II Aurora at 82,500 feet. There's that one, yeah. Civil plane has gone supersonic for the first time since Concorde after a successful test flight in New Zealand. Dawn Aerospace's rocket-powered plane will eventually be used to launch satellites into orbit and give daily access to space, according to the company. This achievement signifies a major step toward operational hypersonic travel and daily space access, establishing rocket-powered aircraft as a new class of ultra-high-performance vehicles, said the company in a statement. Although the successful flight was announced on Tuesday, the test took place on 12 November near Mount Cook in New Zealand's South Island. The plane is called the MK-11, or I don't know. I thought it was a Mark II, but maybe it's the MK-11 Aurora.
I think those are eyes. I think it's a Mark II.
Okay, Mark II. That makes more sense, doesn't it? Surpassed the speed of sound, reaching Mach 1.1. Hey, I've been Mach 1.1. That's about it, though. Woo! So let's see. Anyway, so it goes on a little bit talking about this test program.
It's the height it got to, 82,500 feet.
Yeah,
I mean,
pretty
that's impressive. That's pretty damn high.
Well, eventually it's going to get up there even higher.
And it's inverted.
Yeah, which is disorienting. Oh, this is actually a picture of that Inflight upset.
Hang on a minute. It's,
of the rudder
it's
trim
flying
thing.
over New Zealand, so of course it's that way up.
Oh,
isn't it?
that's right. This is the way it always looks.
Yeah, it's in the southern hemisphere. Which way around did you expect?
Does that mean it spins the other way, too?
Probably.
Yeah. Stick with us, AJ. You'll learn a lot.
Indeed.
That you will want to forget. Okay. Thank you, Vernon. Hope you're having fun with your granddaughter. That sounds great. This is from Kevin. Air Canada to bring back the 767. Hello, Captains Jeff and Nick, Dr. Steph, Nick C, and Miami Rickaby's there. But most importantly, producer Liz. Looks like Air Canada is set to bring back a couple 767s out of long-term storage. Thanks for your amazing show and keep up the great work. Kevin from Ontario. And he said, P.S. You'll like this one, AJ. Some great co-hosts have been joining lately. Nice to hear from RJ, AJ, and Captain Stefan.
Good job.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well
there
done.
You go. A shout out to AJ.
Glad you're enjoying their presence. I certainly am. Takes the pressure off me.
Yeah. Kind of distribute the load a little bit here, huh?
So what do they do to these 7.6s? They just rub the rust off and stick them back on the line? How's it work?
Pretty much, I think. Let's see. They're registered Charlie Foca and Charlie Glacka, GLICA. These aircraft are more than 33 years old. Well, so am I, and I'm not dead yet.
More than double
Air Canada.
I thought that was like the prime was around the 30-ish mark, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's well worn in, and all the bugs have been worked out. Let's see. Air Canada.
I like the idea of vintage vehicles, but there is a period between being new and being vintage when they're just old and crappy.
Well, where would you?
What is the?
Where would you say
What's
you
the mark
are in that spectrum?
vintage and
I'm
he's
definitely
vintage.
vintage.
And crappy.
I've gone past
holy
that.
crappy, I'd say. I'll join you in that category.
But isn't this a statement on Boeing's inability to deliver the new planes that they've been talking about? Like,
I don't know. I don't want to editorialize Liz.
Okay. All right.
But if you want to hear what Liz thinks about it, tune in to Liz on aviation.com.
Who doesn't know a thing. So.
The article continues with the incoming fleet breakdown and the number of airplanes they have in order. Mostly Airbuses, 30 A321 XLRs, 27 Airbus 220s, 18 Boeing 787-10s, 12 Boeing 737 Maxes. Don't they know that's a terrible airplane and it crashes? You know, they shouldn't be doing that. 2 Boeing 767-300 ERs. Oh, that's what we're talking about in this article, right? And 1 Boeing 787-9 expected in 2025. Anyway, so thank you very much, Kevin. And thank you, Liz. We're going to continue on with another Canadian, right? Okay.
There's been a lot of Canada in this show.
I know. I don't know why. Might have something to do with our producer.
Just trying to improve the quality of the feedback.
A lot of the news articles, by the way, just coincidentally come from Canada. I don't know. It's weird. This is from Roberta. She says, these peeps are fixing NOTAMs. Hi, Captain Jeff and crew. Roberta here, longtime listener and aviation fan. This is my first feedback, and that's where we play this. Yay! First feedback. Brilliant. All right. Thanks for that,
Good
and hopefully
job.
it's not your last, Roberta. I once had a gig writing about airport ground transportation. I was more interested in the airports and played at being a travel agent for a few years, but otherwise, I'm about as far from aviation in real life as you can get. She's an e-learning developer. Interesting. I've never seen the inside of a cockpit, but sometimes feel like I have, thanks to APG. She's waving to Jeff, Nick, Steph, and all the other pilots I've met along the way. And we're waving back now, Roberta. Recently, I've been listening to some old episodes I missed. I've time traveled back to 2018 and am in the 300s in episode numbers. Was delighted to discover the source of the NOTAMs are garbage quote you frequently play. Episode 342. Was that the first time I played that? Interesting. Yeah, that seems to be. That was right around the time that the Air Canada tried to land on a taxiway in San Francisco. There's some more Canada for you.
Canadian content.
Yeah, more Canadian content. Anyway, good grief. I had no idea what pilots were or are dealing with. We don't either. With this new knowledge, I made a connection when looking at posts from Ops Group, which I discovered after stumbling across their website. They mix humor with aviation operations stuff rather brilliantly. Yes, they do. And both Captain Nick and myself are honorary lifetime members of the Ops Group, International Ops Group, which is an amazing resource.
Yeah, great bunch of people. Marvelous service
Yes.
they provide.
One of those guys was from that airplane that was upside down, down in New Zealand, right? Mark C. And
Wait, is New Zealand down under, or is it over under?
It's over.
over down. I don't know. Anyway, she says, and drum roll. It seems that there is a collaborative effort to tackle the NOTAMs issue as evidenced by the below report after one of their camps, NOTAM camp, which is a super NOTAMs screenshot from their LinkedIn page. Not sure if you're aware of this. Oh, yes, we are. In fact, we've talked about their efforts in trying to, improve or change entirely the whole NOTAM system so that it's relevant to operators out there. Let's see, I grabbed this little screenshot off their website. If you show that one there, here's an indication of the problem that we're dealing with NOTAMs. That paper that young lady is holding up, or that woman, I guess I should say. Some people get upset when I say lady. is just one of several pages of NOTAMs, probably what you'd get on an international flight. Although I have gotten NOTAMs that long for a short domestic flight, actually. And you can see down the jetway, you can just see how many yards or how many meters of NOTAM paper is going out. And there's another view in somebody's hotel room, and this is individual sheets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's 42, I think, pages of NOTAMs.
Public math, not a good idea.
Yeah, I think I did that right. And then look at that good-looking airline pilot there wearing that beautiful Delta Airlines uniform, pointing toward the ridiculous length of NOTAMs. Anyway, and they, of course, we can't forget to mention the fact that this organization, Ops Group, put out the field guide to NOTAMs, which is an amazingly funny look
Hilarious.
at NOTAMs and, kind of tongue-in-cheek view. But they are actually making...
One quick takeaway from those pictures.
Mm-hmm.
You notice how much of that is on a dot matrix printer?
Yes, and that's because, well, for sure,
That's a thing.
Delta Airlines... I think they bought up the world supply of dot matrix printers back in 1970 something or 80, maybe. I don't know.
Let's say early 80s. Yeah.
Yeah, probably. They make a racket too. They just are very, very noisy. It's
satisfying though, tearing that sheet off.
Yeah. No, I hate, dot matrix printouts. Most of the time you can't even read it because the ribbon needs to be replaced. Anyway, Ops Group is definitely a great organization, and they are actually making real progress in trying to fix our NOTAM system for sure. And as you said in your screenshot, the super NOTAMs is part of the fruits of their labor, and they're really trying to make it something that if there's something critical that we really need to know, that it stands out and that you can't miss it. So,
High Hall Boxes has a comment here, Jim.
High Hall Boxes says, if not NOTAMs, what else are we going to block the sun out of the windshield with? Well, newspapers, of course. Well, do they still have newspapers?
No. Nope.
We used to use newspapers to block out the sun. But good
you
point.
Use your sectional. No.
We used to use the rubber tray inserts to stop the cutlery and things from sliding around. You take that off the tray and they stick to the window. Beautiful.
I don't think I've ever seen that on board any of the airplanes I've flown.
Well, you didn't get a meal tray, did you, Jeff?
No, we didn't get a meal, so that's why I didn't get a meal tray.
Meal trays.
Here goes the Boeing versus Airbus argument again.
Well, I flew the L-1011. We did get meals, but I don't recall seeing what he's talking about. So there must be something much more proper than I'm used to or exposed to.
Well, Jeff, I think we should probably start to wrap up here. Maybe just end with Hank, the next one.
Okay, we'll do that. Let me wrap up Roberta's feedback, and then we'll move on to Triple H. Anyway, she said, I thought you might want to interview someone from the group or otherwise share with the APG community. Oh, that sounds like way too much work, Roberta. Maybe Captain Nick would like to interview somebody because he's our interview person. Anyway, who knows? Maybe you'll drive your studio to wherever it is and hold their next camp to participate. Ooh, that might be fun, actually. Fun, yeah. And do a live show from a nearby pub. Well, that sounds like another great idea. Roberta's full of great ideas. She ends with, love the show. Glad you're keeping it going post-retirement. And she's, and the beautiful Victoria, BC.
Yeah, gorgeous place.
AKA another Canadian. Hi, Liz. Oh, I see.
Yeah, Roberta.
They're in cahoots.
Yeah.
I see that. Oh, and then
they're taking over.
One last comment before we go to our last feedback from Tim Van Ram. Turning the rudder trim knob moves the sun out of the windshield. Good point, Tim.
I love it.
See, that's out of the box thinking.
That is out of the box thinking. And speaking of that, who let Tim out of the box? Yeah. All right. And now my neighbors here in this hotel are going, like, what is that guy screaming about?
Yeah, who is this guy?
because this hotel
Sitting
is
there talking to himself for 2 hours.
This hotel is not a luxury property, and that the walls are not very well insulated. Let me just say that.
I feel like there's a story there.
Yeah, probably is. And sadly, it doesn't involve me. Let's end with this feedback from Hank Humphrey, and I think his middle name starts with an H as well, and that's why he is HHH or Triple H. He says, "I'm hooked. I think I started listening to your podcast in my car about number 622. That wasn't that long ago. I'm a retired road warrior out of New York City to Newark. I guess, yeah, that area, New York City, Newark area. Live in Southwest Florida now. Sanibel. Ooh, Sanibel Island.
Nice.
Sanibel and Captiva, some of the most beautiful islands on the
hard with that hurricane.
west coast of Florida, the western Gulf Coast of Florida, which, as Liz is saying in our ear, got hit very hard from at least one or more hurricanes this year. Hope everything is okay down there, and hope you're okay. Anyway, he says, when I get a free moment, I hope to sit down and watch the YouTube videos, but us retired guys are very busy. Yes, I know we are.
Exactly. We want him to participate, not just watch.
Yeah, we want you to participate, Hank. Well, he has participated, Liz. He is one of our new patrons.
I know, but in the chat room.
Oh, yeah, you need to participate in the chat. You need to be here at the live recording on YouTube and be part of our lovely, lovely group of live audience members. Anyways, he says, I love the explanations of the various problems airplanes get themselves into. Well, it's usually something to do with the human.
We're usually scratching our heads trying to work out how on earth they managed it.
I know, like how in the world did they screw that one up? Oh, and then he points out, he said, this is the first podcast I've ever paid for or contributed to. He signed up to be a patron.
Good.
Yay.
So we're honored.
Yes, yay to our patrons.
Good job.
Yes. All right.
Thank you, Hank H. Humphrey.
Yes, thank you so much, Triple H. We do appreciate your patronage, and we also appreciate your contribution, your feedback contribution. And don't be a stranger, and hopefully we'll see you someday in our live audience. I mean, come on, guys, in the live chat. I'm sure we have room for one more at least, right? Yeah, okay.
Airline Pilot Guy.
Well, yeah, let's talk about our website, airlinepilotguy.com, where you can find information about this and that, the crew and the community, and more information about the plane tales. We have a merchandise store. We have a library and so much more. You should check it out at airlinepilotguy.com. Also, we're on social media, or what I like to call the social meds. And I don't know, one of you go for the social meds there. Maybe Captain
I'll
Nick.
do that, Jeff, happily. If you're a Facebook person, then or face plant, as we like to call it, Facebook.com/airline pilot guy, all one word. On X, we're at APG Crew. And if you want to catch the artwork before the show comes out, then go off to Instagram.com/APG Crew. And finally, for this very expensively produced and fine show, live on youtube.com/@airlinepilotguy/streams will get you involved, and we'd love to see you.
Very professional show.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Very professional. Huge.
Very serious.
Where's that dog rescuer? Where's that dog rescuer?
Oh, yeah. Let's see if Hillel is... he's still on the shower. Luckily, it's not my RV.
Hasn't he run out of water yet?
No, not yet. Can you tell us about Slack?
Okay, but I'm dripping wet.
That's all right. Why don't you stay over there and tell us about it? Okay. That way you don't get water all
water
over
on the
everything.
brain again.
Yeah, or the podcast equipment.
APG listeners, please join us on our Slack team. Slack is a communication, coordination, and sharing platform that works on your mobile, laptop, or browser. On Slack, we share news and ideas, we suggest episode and Plain Tales topics, we plan events and meetups. To get into the Slack team, please email me at slack@airlinepilotguy.com. That's SLACK, Sierra Lima Alpha Charlie Kilo @airlinepilotguy.com. Or send me a tweet with your preferred email address to @Hillel, and I'll send you an invitation. That's Hillel, spelled Hotel India 11 Echo 1, and see you in Slack.
Thanks a lot, Hillel.
Jeff?
Yeah?
Do you still have some of that good shampoo from the last place?
No, I use it all. Sorry. Oh, well. He's always so needy.
So mean.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I have to think about myself occasionally, right? Yeah.
Occasionally.
Well, supposedly.
Yeah. All right. Well, guess what? It's now time to wrap it up for good. And let's see. Thank you, everybody. Well, first we thank our half-timer, producer Liz. I'm so happy, though, that you did finally join us, because there's a lot going on when I have to do all the other stuff and the slides at the same time. I've been very spoiled.
He does a lot of swearing when you're not here, Liz.
Well, sorry about that, guys. I'll try not to make it happen again.
Well, no, sometimes that's the toughest thing about doing the show is trying to schedule it and seeing, the availability of everything. And people have lives, we have things going on other than APG. I don't know, what would be more important, but anyway, so, it's kind of tough, but thank you for joining us anyway, Liz. We do appreciate it. And a lot of the work that she does, of course, happens long before we push the record button. There's a lot of prep work that goes into bulk of her work, and we do appreciate you, Liz. I love you.
You're welcome.
And so thank you so much for everything you do. And speaking of loving people, I love all these people in the live audience. They're most of whom are with us each and every week, and they contribute so much to the chat room. Not really much to the show, but a lot to the chat room.
Well, they come out with some good technical stuff sometimes. So
yeah,
thanks for that.
Yeah, and they're comedians as well. So again, as we say all the time, if you have a chance, follow us on the social medias, and then when Liz puts out the notification when we're going to be recording the show, you can join us while we record live. I think you'd have a lot of fun.
It's always on the APG calendar too.
Yep, there you go. All right, and that's on our website. So with that, we're going to end today's show and wish you all clear skies, unlimited visibility, and tailwinds. Take care, and God bless.
Bye, everybody.
See ya.
See you next time.
Yeah, he's up in the sky. It's the airline pilot guy.
Good day.
I used to be such a good pilot till I started APG. I opened doors for little old ladies. I helped them to their seats. Airline pilot guy, I fly America. Oh, airline pilot guy, he can land in heavy fog. I got no friends 'cause I'm always flying. I just don't have the time. But I can land this old plane. I can land it just fine. Airline pilot guy, I fly